John Henry Bonham was an English musician and songwriter, best known as the drummer of Led Zeppelin. Bonham was esteemed for his speed, power, fast right foot, distinctive sound, and feel for the groove. He is widely considered to be one of the greatest drummers in the history of rock music. Rolling Stone readers named him the best drummer of all time in 2011. Biography. Early years. Bonham was born on May 31, 1948, in Redditch, Worcestershire, England, to Joan and Jack Bonham. He began learning to play drums at the age of 5, making a drum kit out of containers and coffee tins, imitating his idols Max Roach, Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. His mother gave him a snare drum at the age of 10. He received his first proper drum kit from his father at 15, a Premier percussion set. Bonham never took any formal drum lessons, though as a teen he would get advice from other Redditch drummers. Between 1962 and 1963, while still at school, Bonham joined the Blue Star Trio, and Jerry Levin and the Avengers. Bonham attended Lodge Farm Secondary Modern School, where his headmaster once wrote in his school report card that he will either end up a dustman or a millionaire. After leaving school in 1964, he worked for his father as an apprentice carpenter in between drumming for different local bands. In 1964, Bonham joined his first semi-professional band, Terry Webb and the Spiders, and met his future wife Pat Phillips around the same time. He also played in other Birmingham bands such as the Nicky James Movement and the Senators, who released a moderately successful single She's a Mod, in 1964. Bonham then took up drumming full-time. 2 years later, he joined A Way of Life, but the band soon became inactive. Desperate for a regular income, he joined a blues group called Crawling King Snakes, whose lead singer was a young Robert Plant. In 1967, A Way of Life asked Bonham to return to the group, and he agreed though throughout this period, Plant kept in contact with Bonham. When Plant decided to form Band of Joy, Bonham was first choice as drummer. The band recorded a number of demos but no album. In 1968, American singer Tim Rose toured Britain and invited Band of Joy to open his concerts. When Rose returned for another tour months later, Bonham was formally invited by the singer to drum for his band, which gave him a regular income. Led Zeppelin. After the breakup of the Yardbirds, guitarist Jimmy Page was forming a new band when he recruited Robert Plant, who in turn suggested Bonham. Page's choices for drummer included Procol Harum's B.J. Wilson, and session drummers Clem Catini and Ainsley Dunbar. Ginger Baker was also rumored to be on Page's list. However, upon seeing Bonham drum for Tim Rose at a club in Hampstead, North London, in July 1968, Page and manager Peter Grant were instantly convinced that he was the perfect fit for the new project, first known as the New Yardbirds and later as Led Zeppelin. Despite an intensive campaign to snare the drummer, Bonham was initially reluctant to join the band. Plant sent 8 telegrams to Bonham's pub, The Three Men in a Boat, in Walsall, which were followed by 40 telegrams from Grant. However, at the same time he was also receiving lucrative offers from established artists Joe Cocker and Chris Farlow. Eventually, Bonham accepted Grant's offer. He later recalled, "I decided I liked their music better than Cocker's or Farlow's." During Led Zeppelin's first tour of the United States in December 1968, Bonham became friends with Vanilla Fudge's drummer Carmine Appice. Appice introduced him to Ludwig drums, which he then used for the rest of his career. Bonham used the longest and heaviest sticks available, which he referred to as trees. His hard-hitting style was displayed to great effect on many Led Zeppelin songs, including Immigrant Song, When the Levee Breaks, Kashmir, The Ocean, and Achilles' Last Stand. In fact, Page once admitted to letting Bonham use a double bass drum in an early demo of Communication Breakdown, but claimed he scratched the track because of Bonham's overuse of it. The studio recording of Misty Mountain Hop perfectly captures his keen sense of dynamics, and this is similarly exhibited by his precise drumming on No Quarter. On several cuts from later albums, Bonham rather adeptly handled funk and Latin-influenced drumming. Songs like Royal Orleans and Fool in the Rain are good examples, respectively displaying great skill with a New Orleans shuffle and a samba rhythm. His famous drum solo, first entitled Pat's Delight, later renamed Moby Dick, would often last for 30 minutes and regularly featured his use of bare hands to achieve different sound effects. Bonham's action sequence for the film, The Song Remains the Same, featured him in a drag race at Santa Pod Raceway to the sound of his signature drum solo, Moby Dick. In Led Zeppelin concert tours after 1969, Bonham would expand his basic kit to include congas, orchestral timpani, and a symphonic gong. Bonham is also credited with the first in-concert use of electronic timpani drum synthesizers during a performance of the song Kashmir in Dallas, Texas in 1977. Many modern rappers would later heavily sample his drumming and incorporate it into their compositions, such as Beastie Boys, who sampled Moby Dick, The Ocean, and When the Levee Breaks. During his time with Led Zeppelin, Bonham was also an avid collector of antique sports cars and motorcycles, which he kept on his family's farm called the Old Hyde. He bought the Plough pub in the nearby village of Shenstone, which shows signs of conversion work to allow him to drive his bikes or cars right behind the bar. This was not the pub featured in the film The Song Remains the Same. It was the New Inn, which is currently boarded up, the only clue to its famous past being a picture hanging close to the bar. Work outside Led Zeppelin, as well as recording with Led Zeppelin, Bonham also found time to play on sessions for other artists. In 1969 Bonham appeared on the Family Dog's A Way of Life, with Page and Jones. Bonham also sessioned for Screaming Lord Sutch on his album Lord Sutch and Heavy Friends in 1970. He played drums on Lulu's 1971 song Everybody Clap, written by Maurice Gibb and Billy Lowry. In 1972 he played drums on a Maurice Gibb-produced album by Jimmy Stevens called Don't Freak Me Out in the UK and Paid My Dues in the US, credited as Gemini. Later in his career, Bonham drummed for his Birmingham friend, Roy Wood, on his 1979 album, On the Road Again, and on Wings' album Back to the Egg on the tracks Rockestra Theme, and So Glad to See You Here. Bonham was the best man of Black Sabbath's Tony Iommi at his wedding ceremony. In 1974, Bonham appeared in the film Son of Dracula, playing drums in Countdown's backing band. This was an Apple film directed by Freddie Francis. Bonham appeared in an overcrowded drum lineup including Keith Moon and Ringo Starr on the soundtrack album. Death. On September 24, 1980, Bonham was picked up by Led Zeppelin assistant Rex King to attend rehearsals at Bray Studios for an upcoming tour of the United States, the band's first since 1977. During the journey, Bonham asked to stop for breakfast, where he drank 4 quadruple vodkas. He then continued to drink heavily after arriving at the rehearsals. They stopped rehearsing late in the evening and the band retired to Page's house, the Old Mill House in Clewer, Windsor. After midnight on September 25, Bonham fell asleep. Someone took him to bed and placed him on his side. Benji Lefevre and John Paul Jones found him dead the next afternoon. Bonham was 32 years old. At the coroner's inquest it emerged that in the 24 hours before he died, Bonham consumed approximately 40 shots of 40% ABV vodka, after which he vomited and aspirated the vomitus, causing asphyxiation. A verdict of accidental death was returned at the inquest, held on October 27, 1980. An autopsy found no other drugs in Bonham's body. John Bonham's body was cremated and his ashes were interred on October 12, 1980, at Rushock Parish Church, Worcestershire. His headstone reads: Despite media rumours that drummers including Cozy Powell, Phil Collins, Carmine Appice, Barry Emmett Barlow, Roger Taylor, Simon Kirke, or Bev Bevan, among others, would join the group as his replacement, the remaining members decided to disband Led Zeppelin after Bonham's death. They issued a press statement on December 4, 1980, confirming that the band would not continue without their drummer. We wish it to be known that the loss of our dear friend and the deep respect we have for his family, together with the sense of undivided harmony felt by ourselves and our manager, have led us to decide that we could not continue as we were. It was simply signed Led Zeppelin. Family. John Bonham had 2 siblings. His younger brother, Mick Bonham, was a disc jockey, author and photographer, and his younger sister, Deborah Bonham is a singer-songwriter. Bonham was married to Pat Phillips, and the couple had 2 children. His daughter Zoe Bonham is a singer-songwriter and also appears regularly at Led Zeppelin conventions and awards, and his son Jason Bonham, a rock drummer who has gained success with various bands including UFO, Foreigner, and Bonham. He previously played in a band called Black Country Communion which included Glenn Hughes, Derek Sherinian, and Joe Bonamassa. They recorded an album called Black Country in 2010. On December 10, 2007, he played with Led Zeppelin on the Ahmet Ertegun tribute concert, as well as their previous reunion at the Atlantic Records 40th anniversary show on May 15, 1988. A 1970 film clip of a 4-year-old Jason playing drums appears in the Led Zeppelin film The Song Remains the Same. Zoe and Jason appeared at the induction ceremony for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995 along with the surviving members of Led Zeppelin. John's mother, Joan Bonham, died aged 81 on February 10, 2011. She was one of the lead vocalists for the Zimmers, a 40-member band set up as a result of a BBC documentary on the treatment of the elderly. Bonham's cousin Billy Bonham also played keyboards for Terry Reid and Ace Kepherd. Legacy, awards and accolades. While Bonham is widely considered to be one of the greatest and most influential rock drummers by other musicians and commentators in the industry, he continues to receive the greatest acclaim from fans, and several opinion polls and critic lists continue to list him in first place before any other drummer in rock history. In 2007, Stylus magazine rated Bonham #1 on its list of the 50 greatest rock drummers, as did the online music magazine JGuys.com in 2008, and a Rolling Stone readers' poll where he led the list by a significant margin in 2011. Bonham was ranked at #1 on Classic Rock's 2005 list of 50 greatest drummers in rock, and Modern Drummer magazine describes him as the greatest rock and roll drummer in history. In September 2008, Bonham topped the Blabbermouth.net list of rockers fans want brought back to life, ahead of Elvis Presley and Freddie Mercury. Rhythm magazine voted him the greatest drummer ever, topping their readers' poll to determine the 50 greatest drummers of all time for its October 2009 issue. At the end of the BBC Two series I'm in a Rock and Roll Band. On June 5, 2010, John Bonham was named the best drummer of all time. John Bonham has been described by AllMusic as one of the most important, well-known and influential drummers in rock. Adam Budofsky, managing editor of Modern Drummer magazine, writes if the king of rock and roll was Elvis Presley, then the king of rock drumming was certainly John Bonham. Influence on notable musicians and tributes. Many rock drummers were influenced by John Bonham's work with Led Zeppelin. A few of them include Alex Van Halen, Joey Kramer, Lee Kerslake, Tony Thompson, Dave Grohl, Tommy Lee, Peter Criss, Chad Smith, Dave Lombardo and Brad Wilk. Several of these drummers have testified to Bonham's influence, such as Roger Taylor of Queen, who stated, "The greatest rock and roll drummer of all time was John Bonham, who did things that nobody had ever even thought possible before with the drum kit. And also the greatest sound out of his drums they sounded enormous, and just one bass drum. So fast on it that he did more with one bass drum than most people could do with 3, if they could manage them. And he had technique to burn and fantastic power and tremendous feel for rock and roll." Dave Grohl has said, "John Bonham played the drums like someone who didn't know what was going to happen next, like he was teetering on the edge of a cliff. No one has come close to that since, and I don't think anybody ever will. I think he will forever be the greatest drummer of all time." Similarly, Chad Smith has remarked, "To me, hands down, John Bonham was the best rock drummer ever. The style and the sound was so identifiable to one person. Any drum set that he would play, it sounded like him." Charlie Watts of the Rolling Stones told guitar players James Abrecht, "John Bonham is the best at being John Bonham and doing what he does. Or did unfortunately, he's dead. He was the best. There wasn't anyone better than John Bonham at doing that, and thank goodness we've got some records so that you can hear it." Eric Carr, former drummer of Kiss, stated, At least 85% of all of the rock drummers today have gotten influences from Bonham, and all have recognized how great he was. Every band in the business guaranteed has tried to do something with that Bonham sound, which shows that everyone from A to Z has listened to him. Musicians other than drummers have also paid tribute to Bonham. John Paul Jones, who formed a very tight musical partnership with him as Led Zeppelin's power rhythm section, stated that Bonham was a bass player's dream. Jimmy Page has also commented, "One of the marvelous things about John Bonham which made things very easy for a producer was the fact that he really knew how to tune his drums, and I tell you what, that was pretty rare in drummers in those days. He really knew how to make the instrument sing, and because of that, he could just get so much volume out of it by just playing with his wrists. It was just an astonishing technique that was sort of pretty holistic if you know what I mean." A major tribute for John Bonham entitled Bonzo, The Groove Remains the Same A night in honor of John Henry Bonham was performed on September 25, 2010 the 30th anniversary of his death. Notable drummers that appeared at the tribute included Steven Adler, Vinny Appice, Kenny Aronoff, Frankie Banali, Frederick Cowery, Jimmy Danda, James Kotak, Chris Slade, Chad Smith, Brian Tiki, Joe Travers, Simon Wright, and John's son, Jason Bonham. Carmine Appice performed via video. Bonham is also admired outside of rock music. In 1988, for example, the Pulitzer laureate Christopher Rouse composed Bonham in tribute to the drummer. Equipment: drums. Bonham initially used Premier drums, but in the late 1960s was introduced to Ludwig drums by Carmine Appice of Vanilla Fudge. Throughout the remainder of his career, Bonham was a major endorser of Ludwig drums. In concert, he used a wide range of different drum kits, but mostly of the same sizes. From 1970 onwards, he used a 26A, 14E bass drum, which was the most identifiable part of his setup. He used 16A, 16E, 18A, 16E and a 20A, 18E floor tom, while occasionally changing his tom sizes, which included sizes 14A, 12E, 14A, 10E, and 15A, 12E. Studio and touring kit: drums, Ludwig in natural maple thermo-gloss clear finish, 14A, 12E tom, 16A, 16E floor tom, 18A, 16E floor tom, 26A, 14E bass drum. Bonham did have a second bass drum that can be seen in the Communication Breakdown promo. However, it was never used in any recordings. This double bass drum setup was once lived during a tour with Vanilla Fudge. Also included a 20E floor tom which were rarely used due to their size. Studio and touring kit: drums Ludwig in green sparkle, 14A, 10E tom, 16A, 16E floor tom, 18A, 16E floor tom, 26A, 14E bass drum, 14A, 6.5E Ludwig Chrome Supraphonic 402 snare, 29E machine timpani, 29E, 32E universal timpani, Ludwig Speed King bass pedal. John was known for telling the band that the green sparkle kit was his favorite and best sounding kit, and it was used on all recordings from 4 onwards, excluding presents where he used the silver sparkle kit. Touring kit: drums Ludwig Amber Vistalite, 14A, 10E tom, 16A, 16E floor tom, 18A, 16E floor tom, 26A, 14E bass drum, 14A, 6.5E Ludwig Chrome Supraphonic 402 snare, 29E machine timpani, 32E universal timpani, Ludwig Speed King bass pedal. Touring kit: drums Ludwig stainless steel, 15A, 12E tom, 16A, 16E floor tom, 18A, 16E floor tom, 26A, 14E bass drum, 14A, 6.5E Ludwig Chrome Supraphonic 402 snare 42 strand snare, 29E machine timpani, 32E universal timpani, Ludwig Speed King bass pedal. Cymbals: Bonham used paste cymbals exclusively. His cymbal setup included paste giant beat cymbals until 1970. The paste endorsement agreement shows he experimented with cymbals including the 600 series before changing to a complete set of what is now the 2002 series in '71, which he used for the rest of his career. His paste giant beat series cymbal setup, 15 giant beat hi-hats, 18 giant beat multi, 20 giant beat multi, 24 giant beat ride, his paste 2002 series cymbal setup, 15 2002 sound edge hi-hats, 24 2002 ride, 18 2002 medium crash, 20 2002 medium crash, 18 2002 medium crash, 38 paste symphonic gong, Ludwig cowbell, drumheads. Bonham played Remo drumheads throughout his career. For his wood drums, he always used Remo-coated emperors on his batter sides, while using coated ambassadors on the resonance side of his toms, and a diplomat or clear ambassador on the resonance side of his snare drum. The bass drum's front head was always a medium-weight head, for instance a Remo-coated ambassador. The tom's batter heads were always tuned medium-tight, and the resonant head was always tuned way up, for a full, round sound. The bass drum heads were also tuned a lot higher than normal. He never put anything inside his bass drum, although his band members have said that he would sometimes line it with tin foil so that it would project, with the sound reflecting off the foil. He only used a felt strip on the batter side occasionally. On the Vistalites he used Remo CS black dots on the batter side of the toms and the bass drum and clear ambassadors on the resonance side. The snare always had a coated emperor on the batter side and an ambassador or a diplomat on the snare side. He sometimes used a Gretsch 42-strand snare wires to fatten the snare sound. Bass drum pedal, Bonham used Ludwig's Speed King pedal throughout his career. His trademark bass drum triplets, a Euro played interchangeably with doubles and singles a Euro, which are most notable in Good Times Bad Times, were played on a single bass pedal, and not a double bass pedal. Unlike some contemporary drummers, Bonham did not use a double bass drum kit. He did once own one, but it was removed from his kit by the rest of the band. John Bonham did play double bass drums while the band was touring with the band Vanilla Fudge. Double bass drums were used on the recording of the drum solo Bonzo's Monterey. It is a unique approach to incorporating a second bass drum. Bonham added a second bass drum and simply played it with his left foot the way he would normally be pedaling January 8 notes on his hi-hat. In sections, this creates two unique bass drum parts that syncopate and sometimes overlap, causing both kick drums to be hit at the same time. It is possible to hear the squeak of the pedal in several recordings, including Since I've Been Loving You, The Ocean, The Rain Song, Over the Hills and Far Away, Dancing Days, The Crunch, Houses of the Holy, 10 Years Gone, Bonzo's Monterey, and the live version of I Can't Quit You Baby on Coda and All My Love On and Through the Outdoor. Jimmy Page later commented, "The only real problem I can remember encountering was when we were putting the first boxed set together. There was an awfully squeaky bass drum pedal on Since I've Been Loving You. It sounds louder and louder every time I hear it." Laughs. That was something that was obviously sadly overlooked at the time. Tribute kits. In 2005, Ludwig began issuing Bonham reissue kits in green sparkle maple and amber Vistalite. Ludwig currently offers Zep kits in their Vistalite and Classic lines, with a 26 bass drum, a 14 tom mounted on a snare stand, and 16 and 18 floor toms. In 2007 they issued a limited edition stainless steel kit similar to the ones Bonham used on the last Led Zeppelin tours in the 1970s. The stainless steel shells were manufactured by Ron Dunnett of Dunnett Classic Drums. References. Sources: Bonham, Mick. John Bonham, the powerhouse behind Led Zeppelin. South Bank Publishing. ISBN 1-904915-11-6, Bonham, Mick. Bonham by Bonham, My Brother John. Solihull, Icarus Publications. ISBN 0-9545717-0-3, Welch, Chris and Nichols, Jeff. John Bonham, A Thunder of Drums. San Francisco, Backbeat Books. ISBN 0-87930-658-0. External links: Led Zeppelin official site, johnbonham.co.uk, Drum World John Bonham page, John Bonham videos, pictures, and quotes at totaldrumsets.com, the 23 John Henry Bonham drum outtakes, John Bonham at the Internet Movie Database.